Do you wonder if others are dealing with the same project management challenges as you? Not sure where to turn for guidance and leadership? Office hours are in session as we discuss project management and PMOs with global leaders, hearing their story and learning their secrets to success. Our goal is to empower you and help you elevate your PMO and project management career to new heights. Welcome back to Project Management Office Hours with your host, Pmo Joe.
Welcome, everyone, to Project Management Office Hours. We're the #1 live project management radio show in the U.S., broadcasting to you from the Phoenix Business Radio X studios in Tempe, Arizona. I'm your host, Pmo Joe, and for the next hour, we'll be talking project management. Before we jump into the show today, I wanted to mention next week on March 10th, I'll be a guest of Stuart Easton's in his webinar series that he hosts through his company, Transparent Choice. That'll be on March 10th at 9 a.m. Arizona time. Stuart is over in the UK. I'm not exactly sure what local time it'll be over there, but we're going to be talking about PMO leadership and digging into how we can improve overall PMO performance by improving the leadership that we have within our PMOs. And then later in the year, I'll be just confirmed I'll be speaking at Boston University's Project Management and Practice Conference in June and the ASU Project Management Summit in September. I had the good fortune to present at both of those last year. They're great events, and I'll be back again this year. So everybody take a moment, go out there, Google Boston University Project Management and Practice and the ASU PM Summit. That site's not quite up yet, but that'll be out there soon. Of course, we also want to thank our sponsors, the PMO Squad and the PMO Leader. The PMO Squad is the premier PMO consulting firm in the United States. You can learn more about them at www.thepmosquad.com. And the PMO Leader is a new global platform. It's the only true global platform that's e-commerce based for project management leaders and teams in the world, we believe. And you can learn more about that, of course, by visiting that site at www.thepmoleader.com. And finally, a reminder for everyone that Project Management Office Hours is a podcast, even though we're live right now. And if you want to see upcoming guests and listen to our previous episodes, go out and visit the projectmanagementofficehours.com website to see all the good content we have out there. So with all of that, I am super excited today to be joined by our special guest, Bill Dow. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. I'm excited to be here. It's been a long time. We've been trying to schedule this for a while. Actually, back in the day when you only did in person, if you may remember.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. We were trying to coordinate schedule. I bet I reached out over a year and a half. I bet close to 2 years ago we started to get this. But we hosted a clubhouse room together last Saturday, and now here we are on the radio. So it's fantastic. If you could take a moment, Bill, just say hello to the listeners and share a little bit about yourself so they get to know more about who you are.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, as you said, my name is Bill Dow. I have 30 years in the PMO and project management space. I'm a speaker around the world, so I've spoken from London, England, to Las Vegas, to Toronto, to Vancouver, to San Diego, so coast to coast from US to Canada. I've written 4 books, so 2 on project communications, 2 on PMOs. My project communication tools book is still out there, very active. It's actually sold in a number of universities and colleges. So that kind of keeps that engine going. And so one of the, claim to fame is I've managed 10 PMOs. And so 2 at AT&T and Singular, 7 at Microsoft, and now my largest PMO at the University of Washington. And so really, really excited about kind of sharing that experience and my background today.
And Bill, also were you one of the finalists or one of the top 15 for PMO Leaders of the Year last year?
Yeah, top 15 in the leaders, or 16 or something in the PMO Leaders. So yeah.
And that's through the PMO Global Alliance. So obviously a lot of history and experience in the industry. And we have you out on the PMO Leader site as well. Yeah. So you're out there as a speaker, your books, and getting some of your training and all that stuff out there as well. So
there, yeah.
thanks so much, Bill. Let's talk project
course.
management, right?
Yeah.
Let's dig in. Let's jump in.
Okay.
And for us, we always like to have on our show not just the technical side of project management, but the journey, right? How do we get to where we are today? And as you mentioned, you've had 10 PMOs, and
Yeah.
that takes time, right? 30 years worth of experience. What's that journey like for you? How's that?
Yeah. Well, it actually, I got to take it back. I got to take it back to 1991, actually, when I managed my first project. So, like most PMO managers or directors, we all generally start from being project managers. You just don't magically become a PMO manager or director. But in 1991, I was working at Ministry of Transportation and Highways in Victoria, BC. And I was actually moving two big projects. They were on the mainframe and they were moving to Oracle. And so back in the mainframe days, right? And so a long time ago, so one was called the Rockfall Hazardous rating system. And it was a very, very complicated project because what we did is we had to go inventory every rock slope in the province of BC.
Wow.
Because from a safety perspective, so if a rock would fall onto a car on a highway, we needed to, from a legal perspective, we needed to know the characteristics of that rock slope. So that was one of my first projects I ever managed. And then I jumped into another project, which was called Railway Crossing Inventory System, which was the same thing, was mainframe to Oracle. And just the nuances of taking people off a mainframe onto an Oracle client server back at the time was just very complicated. And Railway Crossing was the same thing. We had to safety and do the inventory of those projects. And that, I fell in love with project management then. I fell in love with driving teams and organizing teams and really passionate about, how can I make these projects successful? And how do I drive the success of projects? So from there, I did that for about 9 years or so. And then I jumped to a PMO manager. And then I jumped to a portfolio manager. And then I jumped to a program manager. And then back to a project manager. And then back to a PMO manager and now a PMO director. So it's been a ride, but what it really has been interesting to do all those various roles, because you come at these roles from different characteristics. But my heart, my passion is still in project management. And therefore, as I drive and deliver these PMOs, I think it really, that passion and that excitement comes out on a regular basis as I try to execute and make the PMOs better.
And back when you and I were in college, they didn't have project management degrees, right? So
No.
what were you doing before in 91 before you became a PM, right? I mean,
Developer.
I was just an accidental PM like you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a project manager was, right? I didn't even know that was a role.
So I started as a developer in XSpace.
Okay.
And so, and then from there I went to business analysis and was a BA and writing BRDs. And I said, okay, can I have a chance at running these projects? And, it was still relatively new. 91 project management was still new. And so we said, okay, let's let them take a shot at these. And I got these two mainframe projects, and it was amazing experience, and it was across the province, and there was so much goodness about it, but it really did have me fall in love with the industry.
And what do you think you learned, like that transition? Because almost every guest we have on, right, tells us about this accidental project management journey that they start on. And several were developers, right? When they start, I know Ben Aston, the digital project manager, who's up in your area in Vancouver.
Yep.
He was a developer, and he's now in the project management space. What is it about that switch, right, from being the team member developer to the team leader on the project itself? What was it about that?
Yeah, I love the leadership components. I love the coordination components. I really love the fact that you needed to drive the execution of the team. And so when we made that switch, it was really about, okay, let's get this team together to execute this one project. And when I was a developer, I loved the developing. I love that. And I think that still helps me today, having that core development skills and background. But when you make that switch, it's really about driving that team and making that team drive forward. And I just love that aspect of it.
Yeah, it completely makes sense. And then, of course, the the journey up the proverbial corporate ladder, right,
Yeah.
at all the different roles.
Yeah.
How do you, as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking with Stuart Easton next week about PMO
Yeah.
leadership, and you've got an experience there. We've done some survey work, and we found that it's close to 80% of first-time PMO leaders were project managers, right, promoted up
Yeah.
into a manager role, and then they do horrible, right? They fail
Yeah.
miserably. What do you think are some of the key things that differentiate being a project manager from being a PMO leader?
Yeah. So one of the key components of project management is you go deep. You really understand your project end to end. You know all the aspects of what's going down. A PMO leader has to look wide, right? And so it's really, really important that you're looking at the organization as a whole, and really looking at how do you sell that organization? How do you drive this wide view compared to this depth? And a lot of project managers struggle, or sorry, a lot of PMO managers struggle with making that transition. And so when I talked about popping from a portfolio manager to a project manager to a program manager, it allowed me to have that wider view that sometimes PMO managers who become accidental, they go from project, superstar project manager to the PMO manager, they don't get that wide view right away. Therefore, they think they can still manage every project. They think they can still go deep on every project, and you just can't do that. You have to shift to running an org, running an organization, than running a particular project. And there's different skill sets.
So how do we as industry leaders communicate to organizational leaders that they need to be prepping or training or preparing PMO managers and directors to be leaders and not just project managers? What can we do to help
Yeah.
improve that?
Well, let me kind of side ask that question in a different way.
Yeah.
What do we do to make an HR director a leader?
Yeah.
What do we do to make a finance director a leader? Right? Because when I look at these organizations and I look at a PMO, I look at that PMO manager, director, whatever your case, as the same as these HRs and finance and marketing and sales. So it's not about just kind of singling out, is what do organizations do to make their leaders overall better at running their organizations? And that is people skills, leadership skills, compassion skills, right? That is really driving an organization as a whole. Doesn't matter necessarily which particular one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we have examples throughout the organization where it works, right? I mean,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
what the challenge, or a challenge, right, is we bury the PMO inside another department, right? Usually it
yeah,
becomes the IT PMO as opposed HR is the
yeah,
organization's HR department.
yeah,
Marketing is the organization's marketing
yeah.
department. So that's where I wonder if there's a challenge by burying it within a department. Maybe they're not getting the same access to leadership skills because they're kind of a sub function and not an actual function.
Yeah, and every company's going to differ, right? Based on the size and the complexity. A Microsoft, which will have multiple layers, could put their PMOs in various places. So yeah, so generally 100% right. They generally fall in IT, but I mean, we need to change that conversation. Let's have it fall at the same place finance and HR does. And then that would fundamentally change how PMO directors are looked at.
Yeah, it makes sense. And certainly we don't want to always just look at what fails, right? But PMOs succeed, right? There's
Yeah.
tremendous value in having a PMO. What are some of the things you've gathered over the years as to how PMOs can be successful? Where are they successful?
Yeah, so there's a couple components to that. So I think when we look at the success of a PMO, I think the first thing we have to look at is what value is it bringing to the organization, right? Kind of a default standard answer. I get that, but across the 10 PMOs, I'm always asked that question, like, what do you bring? Like, what value you bring, right? And so what I do is I fall back to a lot of it about the project management, right? So the projects are delivering on time and on budget. And I think the standard corporate answer is, and with value. And I just want to challenge that a little bit. And so I still strongly believe that projects have to deliver on time and on budget. Totally get that. And that helps drive the organization. But when we think about value, I just want to pivot that conversation a little bit and say, look at the success rate of our projects still, right? I think you quoted it. Our projects continue to fail. And so we don't deliver on time and on budget. So don't even add value. Don't add those other things yet. Let's just nail on time and on budget first. And then we can start adding value. Because when I think about value, a lot of times it's on the team or the project team or the project manager to deliver that value. And I don't believe that's the case. I think it's on the organization who's receiving the project. Because my project managers are working on 3 or 4 projects right now. They have no time to collect value that could take 6, 8, 2, 3 years to actually realize. So I'd like to pivot the conversation. What I've been doing is pivoting and saying, you know what? We will nail our on time. We will nail our on budget, right? We'll nail that first, and then we crawl, walk, run. We'll add some additional features. And one of the things we find is quality, right? Quality is a huge component, and quality's gone out the window. And so, I really feel like we need to nail the basics. And, when you think about quality, right, you think about some of the couple of mobile phone things, right? And so when new releases come out, instead of downloading that mobile phone right away, I look and I search and they go, don't do it, don't do it. We have to patch the patch that just got patched, right? And so I think we got to bring back a different view of that and really look at on time, on budget, nail that first, and then maybe drive quality. But from a PMO manager perspective, you were saying, like, what are some of the things they can do? I think there's 3 or 4 key points, right? They have to first understand relationships. They need to have a seat at the leadership table, and they need to have good relationships all across the leadership, right? They need to be able to know that they can go and speak to any leader about what their organization is doing, what theirs doing, what theirs, right? And have that organization talk, and they have that good seat at the table. They need to know the strengths and weaknesses of their own PMO, right? I think that's critical, right? We've got superstars, we've got folks that are still developing. Who do we put on? How do we adjust? How do we set up our projects for success? I think that's a key component. I think they need to know their subject area, right? I think they need to know project management, because what happens is, and I face it every day, is I have project managers that come to me and say, I'm having trouble with my project. What would you do? I know you've managed projects before. Can I get some advice? If you plop a PMO leader in that has no experience managing projects, then I think they're really going to struggle going, I really don't know how I can help you with this. So I think that component of knowing that subject area is critical. And then one thing, and I know you probably won't like this, but I think you have to sell the PMO. I think you're constantly selling the PMO. So what do I mean by that, right? What I mean is you're selling your organization, you're selling your people, you're selling what your PMO can bring, right? I've been doing 10 PMOs. I've seen PMOs shut down. I've seen PMOs, right? And so if you're not constantly selling and having that elevator speech and selling what your people can do, I think you're going to struggle. And I know there's lots of talks, don't sell your PMO and stuff. I'm always selling, and my people know I'm selling on behalf of them. And it's actually worked out very nicely.
Yeah,
What do you think?
No argument for me on selling. We've actually had some sales experts on our show
Yeah.
to try to be able to bring some skills to the project management leader to help them know that they have to sell.
Yeah.
And even in the PMO squad, our purpose-driven PMO, within our measurement section, right? It's purpose, measure, optimize. And in our measure, we say communicate your measurements, right? Too often, we don't do that. We don't communicate how well we're doing, right? People point out sometimes when we don't do well, but we have to learn that we need to be pounding our chest and letting people know when we do add that value, when we do have success.
Yeah, because I always go back to that little kind of story, a little question. I say, hey, do you think an HR director has to sell the need for the HR? And people, no, clearly there's HR. Do you think a finance director has to sell the need for finance in an organization? No. Think a PMO director has to sell, right? And of course they do, right? We're constantly selling. We have that other departments don't have. We have the same, we don't have that, they don't have the same pressure. They don't have to lay their head down at night and go, how do I sell my organization tomorrow? Where I'm constantly looking at that. Because PMOs get shut down like this. We don't need them anymore. Boom, gone.
Yeah.
Projects don't go away, but the organization goes away. And I've experienced it, right? And so it just happens. So if you have that selling mindset and your people know you're selling on behalf of them, then it really helps solidify you as a leader.
Yeah, and that's the one area that I might have some contest with you on is the subject area expertise. And again, as you mentioned, depends on the organization, the size of the company. A smaller PMO, absolutely, I agree with you. It's maybe in a larger PMO where there's layers of leadership, a director, and then maybe managers. Having your managers who are the subject matter experts and your director be an organizational leader expert. Their ability to sell, if they came out of finance, for instance, or if they came out of operations or manufacturing, they know how to lead large functions. And I think there can be some great value that they could provide to a PMO to be successful.
100%. No, I love that. And I've managed all. Like right now, I have 3 managers and leads. I've been a PMO of 1. I've been a PMO, right? So I've had the combination of those different things, and so I've always had that root of project management in my background. So folks can come and go, hey, what would you do? What would you do? But ideally, you're 100% right. It should go through the manager layer. It's just that passion and that excitement. I'm more than willing to jump in and help out. Give me your project schedule. I'll whip that off for you. So I just love it. I just absolutely love it. And that shows in my organization as well.
And you had mentioned the statistics, right? So whenever I present, I think probably every presentation I've ever done anywhere, I'll put up the pulse of the profession trend graph that shows that we've been flat as an industry.
Yeah.
Depending if you're listening to Forrester, Gartner, PMI, it depends, but anywhere from only 35 to 55% success rates on projects.
Why is that?
Right.
Like,
We've invested billions of dollars in technology. We have more people certified than ever. We have more population, right? There's more project managers or scrum masters. We've even split out the industry into 2 different ways to approach it. And I come back to leadership. That's why I'm talking about next week with Stuart, is we have never addressed how to prepare a leader within project management. All the
Joe,
certifications are individual based. We
you know what
don't
else?
have that.
You know what else has changed though is the 4 to 5 projects that PMs are managing nowadays. That has not always been a thing, right? That has slowly shifted over time, right? Over my 30 years, that has slowly shifted. You'd have 2, right? And they'd be big, meaty projects. But we're hearing, and we interviewed some folks or talked to some folks yesterday, 16 projects, 15, 25, 70. One lady had 70. Come on.
In Clubhouse, one lady had 70 projects she was
70
How
projects.
is that even possible?
Well, and if you break that down, right, and there's different sizes of projects, but I think there's an expectation of what you expect a project manager to do, a schedule, a risk log, like the DNA of project management. You can't do that across 70. You can't do that across 10 very well.
It's a
right.
half an hour, 35, 40 minutes a day per project.
Right.
I mean,
it doesn't make sense.
Work. Yeah.
So I love the fact that you brought up Pulse of Profession, because I loved that document. I lived by that document. I was dying for it every year. This year wasn't so great, but I loved it because it gave you the facts. Like PMI was out there searching, give me the data, and then I would use that and go, I got to key in on this. This is a problem area. This is a problem. I think it was last year where they talked about robots at NASA. I'm going, oh my God, that's awesome. Can you imagine if we actually get to that place? So but I can't fathom why we're failing so often. I agree, it is leadership, but even with the best leadership skills on 70 projects, how are you going to do that? On 15 projects, how are you going to show that you're an amazing leader across 70 projects?
Well, and that's
you
where
can't do it.
The PMO leader has to be able to work within the organization to know that you can't have a PM with 70 projects.
Right.
And now in that particular instance, it was a smaller organization where the PM was the PMO leader, and
Yeah.
they were.
Yeah.
So again, there isn't a one size fits all.
No.
Your point of this though is you've written about all of it too, right? You've written on the building, the running, the shutting down, right? You've got the whole life cycle. It's about your most current book, right?
I did. Yeah, I have it right here. PMO Life Cycle. You probably can't see it, but that's okay. It's called the PMO Life Cycle: Building, Running, and Shutting Down. And what's really fascinating, what I really tried to focus on, it's an upgrade from my tactical guide for building a PMO, which was really successful. It's done really, really well, but PMI licensing ran out, and so I updated it. And so this one's called the PMO Lifecycle: Building, Running, Shutting Down. And what it has is 3 components: how to build a PMO, how to run a PMO, and how to shut down a PMO. And what I think I've done is, and it's different from any other book, is it's given that complete life cycle, right? And so what I find is that we have tons of people that will go out and put articles and webinars and all that stuff on how to build a PMO, but they never talk about running a PMO, and they never talk about shutting down a PMO. And so it's like, well, okay, so let's do a little experiment, right? So if you go on Google and you go how to build a PMO, hundreds and hundreds of hits. You go how to run a PMO, I'm mainly the big hit there.
Mm-hmm.
You write how to shut down a PMO, I'm the main hit there. So why is that? There's hundreds and hundreds of PMOs out there. Like why do all the leaders forget about running a PMO, and why do they forget about shutting down a PMO? Because PMO shut down on a regular basis, not daily, but on a regular basis. Why are we not tackling those 3 components? Well, my book tackles that, because it's very different to build it than it is to run it. And when you're running it, and that's kind of the uniqueness of me still working, but being out there and doing webinars and writing books, is because I'm in the heart of COVID, I'm in the heart of running a PMO, and I can share what's really like running a PMO in these organizations. But if you go out there and do the Google searches, it's amazing that these top leaders have missed running and shutting down. They're just not there.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, good point. And obviously the practical experience as someone who's still running them, right? You have that firsthand knowledge. The guess is we do such a bad job, industry, at building them, that there's so much time that people don't even get to the point of how do I run one, because I'm always in that point of building and improving. But help me on the shutting down part, right? So if I'm a manager of a PMO, I don't want to shut down my PMO. I'm going to be out of a job.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you don't get that choice. Let's be clear. Sometimes you don't get that choice. So let's talk about shutting down. So I've shut down multiple for a variety of reasons. One was it was a program PMO, and the program got canceled, so you shut down.
Yeah.
Right. One was, hey, you're all getting laid off. We're doing 14,000 person layoff at a big company. You're shutting it down. Right. So there's multiple scenarios. Now, this is why I laid that out, because they're shutting down the PMO, and then there's, okay, you get laid off, or they're shutting down the PMO and you're still there. And so I'm saying you got to start strong and you got to end strong, because you don't know what's going to necessarily happen to you at the end of that shutdown. And it's not just about reversing what you built and reversing what you ran. It's about contracts. It's about vendors. It's about, I have software licenses that I've got going because it's all PMO software. What happens to that when it shuts down? Shutting down an organization like this is a major component and a major set of steps. And I've outlined those big steps because, frankly, it's not out there. Like there's just nothing out there. And so that's where I kind of wrapped it up in that book and the end-to-end.
So, and again, we want people to go get the book.
Please.
So one would be, where can they get the book? But then second, what are some of the highlights for running? As you mentioned, right? People are building and shutting. So what's running? So where can they get it? And then touch on some of the highlights of how to run a PMO.
So one of the things I did is I expanded all my markets. Some people just hate Amazon. So I got out of I'm on Amazon. on Barnes and Noble, on Apple. I'm on every book platform you could possibly imagine, because I frankly have people coming to me and saying, hey, can I buy it other than Amazon? So it's everywhere. So you just Google the PMO lifecycle, building, running, and shutting down, and you'll get it. I love that question about running, because when you unpack running, what does that mean, right? Well, there's lots of things that we cover in it, but some of the things are things such as a priority list, okay? When you're building a PMO, you're not building out the priority of your projects. You're building an organization. So you got to have a priority list. You have to have transition plans. You have to have standard status reports, standard dashboards, right? Some of these things you don't build in the building part because you don't have the data yet. You're just building the org, you're hiring people, you're building it up. But I laid out, I think there's about 16 different components of actually what is you do in building a PMO that's actually builds on to from the building part. So you build it and then you run it, and there's about 16 parts to running the PMO.
So obviously, tremendous experience, lots of content with books and
Yeah.
presentations and others. Yet you've decided, right, to keep running PMOs, whereas someone like myself, right, I started the PMO squad and we're a consulting firm helping other organizations.
Yeah.
What's the thought process to stay as a practitioner as opposed to a coach or a consultant
Yeah.
making that sort of transition?
That's a great call. And I've been doing that. So my first book, the Project Communication Bible, went out in 2008. So I've been speaking and presenting and webinars and all that since 2008. And so I love that component because I love being out there and sharing all that information, but I still want to keep working. I still like being in the heart of actually delivering things during the things that are going on now. So for example, we're in the middle of COVID, right? And so to be part of COVID and moving folks to remote and how do we work in a remote environment, that has just been a tremendous aspect of my career, and I still love that. I still love being in the middle of it and growing and driving and continue to go. Now, if this PMO gets shut down or we get shift things, maybe I'll make that move. But right now, I just love it. I just love being in the middle of it, especially with these the certain circumstances of the world right now. It's been amazing to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a active participant gives you a perspective.
Yeah.
We consultants certainly are out there helping organizations, but it's been eight years. PMO squad just turned 8 years, so it's been
That's
8 years since
amazing.
I've run a PMO, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I hope it's like
And
a bicycle and think I'll never forget how to do it. But there
but
are
things have changed, right?
yeah,
Things have
absolutely.
changed, especially with this remote world we're at. Now, what's really funny is that, I was involved, I was working in 2000. And so Y2K, we've done the remote thing for a long time, right? Everyone's all up and, oh, we haven't done remote thing. We've done it for 21 years. But what we've not have done is we haven't had our leaders working from home. Right? We haven't had our that's where the fundamental shift happened, because remote work's been around forever, right? Y2K is when it all started. The shift is when the leader sat at home. It made for very differences. And this is why we have Zoom. This is why we have Teams. This is why all that product software and remote software has gone so fast, so quickly, because the leaders went home and started working from there. But the remote work has been around forever. But things have changed, though. There's no question that fundamentally, when you have your whole organization remotely, you have to do things differently.
Yeah, certainly. That completely makes sense. And obviously, since you're still running PMOs, you've been able to stay closely aligned to the project managers, right? The teams that work
Yep.
for you. What is some of the advice that you can give project managers that are looking for either a new role or an advancement or anything about them? And again, especially in a global pandemic, but even outside that.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that we see all the time is still a huge need for project managers. And we've seen Siemens, we've seen HP, we've seen a lot of the big companies have been hiring remote project managers for years. So some advice I would give project managers are twofold. One is I always default back to the art and science. I absolutely love that because so many project managers forget that there's a relationship, there's a communications, there's that whole softness of being a leader. And then there's, oh, I need a risk a log, I need a schedule, I need a project, I need all the goodness of running a project, right? So advice would be when you're thinking about, making a move or shifting around, sell and really up your skills in both aspects. Influence without authority, right? Making sure that you can communicate. If you got a chance to sit at the leadership table, what are your leadership skills like? Are you joking? Are you laughing? Are you making crazy marks? Or do you sit there and do you present yourself like a leader? Because there's a big difference in that when you get a chance to actually present and talk to leaders, you need to represent yourself that way. But you also need to know the DNA of running a project. And so sometimes you could have the best leader and the best social person in the world, and they're wonderful, but they don't have a project schedule. They don't have a risk log. There's no status report, right? So there's that blend there. And I think that blend's really, really important. And I think sometimes a particular person will go to their preference. Oh, I'm a really nice guy and everyone gets along with me. I'll get to my risk and issue stuff later. Or I've got my risk and issue stuff nailed, but no one wants to work for me. And there's a balance there. And so I think you got to do a little self-reflection, but there are a ton of remote jobs. And I just see that's the way that we're going to go for the distant future from a project management perspective.
I'd add into that. That's all great feedback. And then on top of that would be invest in yourself so that if you're going to be in a remote environment, make sure you have internet capacity in your house that's the right bandwidth.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have an external microphone, right? I mean, for $100 to go get a microphone so you can sound appropriately on your leadership meetings. As a project manager, right? You don't want to be the person whose mic is cutting in and out,
Right.
off of the laptop microphone.
Yeah.
Continue to get training, right? Just because you're in a remote setting doesn't mean you can't get trained. So I would say know the art and the science and then invest in both of them. Make sure that you're continuing to invest in both art and science to help you be successful.
But just don't ignore that, right? Like really understand that that's what we're looking for. When I hire a project manager, that is exactly one of the questions I say. Tell me a little bit about art and science and project management. What does that mean to you? Well, and so because you get to the DNA of a person, you know exactly, well, I got great risk logs and I got issue logs and oh man, I OneNote and blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, well, tell me about leadership without influence or influence without authority here. Communication skills. Yeah, something we get to. So, oh, okay, right? Like you can really quickly because it's in the DNA of people. They go one way or the other, and really a successful project manager has both and will invest in themselves.
So in this new world we're in, how do people find roles, right? I mean, here's an example. Yesterday, or this week rather, PMO Squad is filling a need for a client of ours. And I just posted a message on social media. Somebody responds to that message. I send them a link to a Zoom chat. We have an interview within 5 minutes of posting a position.
Wow.
And they're in front of a client for an interview within an hour.
Wow.
It's 100% different world out there, right? I mean, I was amazed at how quickly we were able to respond to something like that.
Yeah.
That's the world we're in, right? So how do we help these project managers? Because obviously lots of downturns, lots of unemployed people out there.
Yeah.
How do we help them find these new roles?
Yeah, and so everyone's going to come from a different perspective, right? So there are people that want to get into project management. There are project managers that are looking for their next role. Everyone's got their own needs. Everyone's got their own desires, their salary. It's not a case by case basis, but sometimes a little bit is, and you want to work with that individual to say, what are your needs? What are your, but it's really about getting them skilled, getting them trained. One of the things that I had done for years and some of my Microsoft PMOs where I hired project coordinators. And project coordinators were very low cost, but they were amazing help to the project managers And was that ever an amazing experience to get people who are out of school or just getting fresh into the environment, gave them project management experience. So I would, if I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for coordinator roles, I'm looking for junior project manager roles. I mentor a ton of people, and I have that exact conversation. I was mentoring a gentleman who just got out of the Army. And he said, hey, how do I get a PM role? And I said, okay, let's look at your experience, let's look at your background, but let's focus on a coordinator. Let's focus on a junior project manager, and hundreds of vendor companies will hire these project coordinators because there's always that need out there with that low cost, low entry skill set entry, but just gives them amazing experience. And then I would point most of the people to the captain, because I think the captain from PMI has done a great job to get people into the industry and start talking that same language. And so that's some of the things where I actually mentor people, and they find these coordinator type or junior project manager type of jobs.
Yeah, great insights. And you had mentioned mentoring and military, so that opens the door for me to talk about VP MMA, which is my nonprofit organization that we formed to help just that, right? It's the Veteran Project Manager Mentor Alliance, where we help veterans transition into civilian project management careers. So thanks for doing that, not working with my organization, but thank you just independently for helping veterans out there with mentoring. It's a tremendous need. They're a tremendous skill set they bring to the table. And there's about 250,000 of them every year who exit the military, with a good percentage of them capable to be future project managers. So check out thevpmma.org, everybody who's listening, to see if it's a great opportunity for you to be a mentor and help a veteran come into the project management space.
And the gentleman I worked with, actually, he wrote a white paper, and how do you apply the knowledge areas to the Army? And I'm sure there's probably a million white papers out there, but on that subject, but I had him write it and then attach it to his resume. And he was like, oh, okay. And so he got back to me, he wrote this white paper, and basically he had said, oh yeah, the managers love it. This is just like, here, attach your resume, but add this white paper. And if you know nothing about the Army, and if you know nothing about missions and all that stuff, and you apply a mission to the knowledge areas, it's fascinating, right? And so I was like, oh, this is a gold mine. Add that to your resume, you're gonna love it. So that was one little tip, and he just jumped all over that.
Absolutely. And I know, in addition to the mentoring and of course the books you've written and running PMOs and presenting, right, all of the things you've done, you've also been a project management trainer, right? So lots of different training courses you've created. What's anything coming up with those?
I do, yeah. I got quite a few.
Access that.
Yeah, I do. I have quite a few things going up. So I do have a course. I'm shifting platforms right now on that course, but I do have a course, the PMO Lifecycle Building, Running, Shutting Down. I have a full course on that. 19 modules, takes you through building, running, and shutting down, mentoring sessions. So I have a whole course on that as well. But basically, when I published my first book, the Communication Tools book in 2008, I was approached by a local college. And so I've been teaching. I taught in Ontario, I taught in Vancouver, British Columbia. So I've been teaching and instructing computers for years and years and years. And so when I first wrote that book, they said, hey, at the local college here at Bellevue College, do you want to come teach? So I've been instructing at the college level for years and years. And what I've done is I've branched out, because some of the college level classes are not covering the same things. So I developed a 6-hour Power BI class.
Oh, wow.
So how do you, and it's literally, how do you take and build PMO dashboards and basically PMO dashboards in Power BI. And I give you sample data and how do you do some basic logical data modeling. So it's 6 hours. We also have June 12th at 8:30, we're running a project integrations class. And so that class is really about jointly teaching that class. And that class is really around, how do you kick off a project? How do you run a project? We talk about art and science. We talk about charters. And so I'm literally starting to go, there's so many people that are desperate on how to kick off and how to start a project. And we give them those step-by-step paths on what to do. What do you do weekly? What do we expect on a weekly basis? So I've developed about 26 specific project management classes that I'll be rolling out. They're live classes, 2 to 3 hours each. And then I've developed 17 PMO classes as well. And I'll be rolling those out in the coming months as well. And again, all exercises, all live, and where you really go deep and we build service offerings and we build all those types of things.
Now, are those, if my math is right, 43 courses, right?
Yeah,
26.
something like that, yeah.
Are those all through Bellevue College, or
No.
those will be independent? How
Yep.
will those be accessible for folks?
Yeah, so we're going to build those up. We'll have a platform. We'll get them all available. I'll post all the information up on my site, buildoutpmp.com. We'll get some up on the PMO Leader site. So I'll have them up there. There'll be multiple places where people can access them. The training link is going to come up on the project integration class fairly soon. But basically, yeah, so we'll have those and be plenty available for people. But I tend to send people to buildoutpmp.com because I put everything up there.
Sure, makes sense. And so, when do you sleep, Bill? Books, training classes, running a PMO in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, I just love it. I just love it. And so, you never work a day in life where you love it, right? And I love this stuff. So I do most Saturdays on this stuff, most Sundays on this stuff is where I spend my time. I never mix the two worlds. I'm off today, day off today. Like I never mix those two worlds. And I have never mixed those two worlds. So I'm very, very passionate about being able to stand up and say, I've never done something on your time. It's all my time, right? And so I do it nights and weekends, and literally just work around the clock, basically, because I'm so passionate about it. I absolutely love it.
Well, the other part that I like about what you just shared, right, is there's I'd call it the humanity and reality of the project management life, is that we're people, right?
Yeah.
Not just robots. We're not just project managers or PMO leaders. So we have personas and we have a life. What's Bill Dow like outside of the PMO world, right? What are some of your
Yeah.
other interests?
I always go with, I love Roger, and everyone knows what I mean. I love tennis. I love tennis, and I love Roger Federer. And so my life outside of PMOs and project management is coaching. And so I coach tennis. I'm a USPTA elite tennis coach. I play tennis, but I'm also a wheelchair tennis coach. So I have every 2 weeks, I have 4 to 5 adult students that are in wheelchairs. And I got myself certified in wheelchair coaching, which was a very difficult test actually, but I got through it. And so every 2 weeks, even during most of the pandemic, we go out and we do wheelchair tennis, and I coach the players in their wheelchairs. And it's just a huge passion for me. I absolutely love it. I make $20 or something for doing it, but it's nothing to do with money. I just love it. I just love it. It's my same passion for tennis I have for PMOs. And so I really, really love my wheelchair tennis. So.
And are you able to, in the pandemic, right? Are you able to do that? Because obviously coaching, you're trying to be close to your athlete, right? To help them, instruct them. How has the pandemic influenced that?
Yeah. So I stepped away from able body because that was a full Saturday where I did 6 hours or 7 hours on Saturdays for able body. And I do wheelchair, but we do it with masks, 4 on a court, only one coach. There's all the parameters in the world that are set up. We did have a small delay, but we were back last Monday night. We were out there hitting, and they just love it. It's an hour and a half every Monday or every bi-weekly Mondays. But with all the parameters and all the masks and all the cleaning, and they can't touch balls, and there's a whole thing. The USPTA has put out all the rules, but yeah, we do it. We still do it. And so.
So I'm a sports fan, and while tennis normally isn't on the top of my list, I try to be well versed in everything, right? And I did not know that's where you were going with your sport. So
Yeah.
Let's see if I can keep up with you here. But you love Roger.
Oh,
Roger's about to get passed by either Rafi
yeah.
or Novak
Novak.
to get
Doesn't
more
matter.
titles. Where do you think that helps him rank
Oh,
in
he's still the GOAT.
comparison to them?
He's still the GOAT. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know why? It's his personality. It's people love Roger. They love Rafa. They don't love Djokovic. They like Djokovic. They don't love him. They love Roger. Roger instills a passion that just, oh my, it's Roger. Like there's a passion about Roger Federer that just leaks to millions around the world. So much so that I tried to get a coin. They put a commemorative coin from Sweden, and it was like sold out within a minute or something, right? And it was like 100,000 Roger coins, and still trying to get my coin. They love them. A Djokovic coin would not sell out in a minute. I'm telling you, there's just something about this guy that people just, he's just, yeah, it's amazing.
And how do you compare eras, right? So for me, growing up,
Yeah.
Bjorn Borg was my guy, right? He was just, he was the best.
McEnroe.
But you go from the wooden racket to the modernization of the sport, right? And now
Yeah.
it's just it's a different game, right? You play, it's a power game as opposed to a technique and finesse game.
Yeah.
Where would you rank someone like a Roger Federer?
Yeah, I think he would adapt and adjust, but there's not only the rackets, there's the data behind it. There's the science behind it. There's, there's a serve +1. There's so much data and science and logistics to it that there wasn't there when a Rod Laver, for example, would go out and play. They just go hit, right? But the rackets have changed the game. The surface has changed the game. The balls, the pressure. There are so many aspects that have changed from those days. And I'm a huge McEnroe fan. I love McEnroe. And so many things have changed that I think a Roger would have adjusted, because ultimately back then was serve and volley, and that's really where his game is. And so I think he would have adjusted, but I don't know. We will never know. I still think he'll be the GOAT, and it's not about his numbers. It's about him, the person.
So one last tennis question, and we'll jump back to some project management stuff.
Okay.
Hey, I'm a sports fan. I could talk all day about tennis. Would be obviously Bobby Riggs, Billie Jean King, the big back there man against women. But again, the evolution of the women's game has probably gone more so than the men's game. Someone like Serena Williams is absolutely an amazing athlete and personality.
Yeah.
How does she compare to what's happening in the men's game? Would we ever be able to see an opportunity where the two sports come together at some events to have a combined event?
I don't think so. We see mixed doubles, right? We see mixed doubles. And if you ever watch mixed doubles, there's a lot of going after the weaker person, no matter who that is. But I don't see it. I see you've got some big, strong servers, and you got some big, powerful people. And Serena could definitely fall within some of those. But the men is just their serves are 200 miles an hour, right? The women are just not hitting at that level. And so I wouldn't even want to see that. I think that would just, let's keep the games. The women's game is an amazing game. They play some amazing tennis. The men have their own characteristics. They play well. I just don't see the mix. I see when they do mixed doubles is really the best, where we combine the two.
Awesome. Well, yeah, nice off ramp to talk about things.
Love Roger.
Back to the project management world. We're getting kind of close. Maybe one or 2 minutes on this one is, think about all of the material you've created, all the content you've created, and if you had to pick out like 1 or 2 nuggets to share with a new PMO leader, what would you share with them? As you don't know anything about them or anything, but just as a generality, to be able to say, here's the 1 or 2 things you really need to be focused on or think about as you start your journey as a PMO leader.
First thing, be nice. Be nice. Like, just be approachable. Be someone that that you're not pushing a ton of policies and policing and, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. Be nice. And if you're nice and you get along with people, it goes tremendously a long way in the success of you in this role, right? And then, the other thing is put some basics in place. Listen to your customers, listen to your leadership. What are the pain points that they're trying to solve? And then start adapting those pain points. Crawl, walk, run. You don't have to solve everything tomorrow. Make it a journey, make it a roadmap, but really outline and listen to your leadership and listen to your customers and listen to your people. And that combination, those three things will help you be successful.
Yeah, that's great advice, Bill. And the reality, right, is we all have customers, whether they're internal or external. And if we don't listen to them, we lose business.
Yeah.
And if you lose business in a PMO, we have to go to your book and look at how to shut down a PMO.
How to shut down, yeah. Or Google, because I got lots of stuff out there.
Yeah. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. A really great conversation.
Thanks.
What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you? And what do you have coming up maybe that people need to be aware of so they get ready to tune into?
Yeah, so more and more classes. So I'll be rolling out classes like crazy. So best way to get a hold of me is Bill Dow at dowpublishingllc.com. So Bill Dow at dowpublishingllc.com. And then my BillDowPMP.com website. I put all my information, all my webinars, all my stuff up there as well. So those two are the two ways to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. And of course, there's social media, LinkedIn, you're out there on that. And then the
Definitely.
Pmo Leader website.
Yeah.
We're fortunate to have Bill and some of his content on our site as well. We're one PMO world and we're building one community, and we're glad to have you part of that, Bill.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And certainly thank you to all of our listeners. Be sure to visit projectmanagementofficehours.com. Check out all the great content, the listing of upcoming shows, all the past shows we've had. And we have a great schedule of live chats coming up with leaders from around the world. Our next show will be with Frank Salatis, father of International Project Management Day. We've got Jennifer Bridges and David Knorr coming up, Stuart Easton, David Barrett, Elena Hill, Danielle Torley, Hamutal Weitz and Daniel Zitter from Israel, Antonio Nieto Rodriguez, Karsten Lay from Vietnam. So a powerhouse packed lineup to get us through the first half of this year. And then, of course, great shows the second half of the year. A reminder that these shows are also recorded. So be sure to subscribe to Project Management Office Hours podcast on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, or whatever your platform of choice is. And thank you to our sponsors, the PMO Squad and the PMO Leader. Visit their websites to learn more about the offerings they have and become a member of the PMO Leader Global Community, where you can interact with your peers and be part of that one PMO community. That's it for now. Office hours are closed. Until next time, I'm PMO Joe, and you've been listening to Project Management Office Hours.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Project Management Office Hours with PMO Joe. You're not alone in your project management journey. We're here to help you achieve your goals. Subscribe to Project Management Office Hours on your favorite podcast platform to catch all of our episodes and hear industry leaders share their story and secrets to success.